You're listening to a conversation between Joanna Rakoff, author and Swiftie, and Tamara Federici, producer of Every Band Ever, already in progress.
At a certain point, I found myself in my kitchen, and the kids and my husband were listening to 1989 in our living room, and I did not realize what was happening, but it was almost as if I were in a kind of fugue state. I was supposed to be cooking dinner, but instead I was dancing alone to shake it off. And that was when I realized that something profound had happened, and I was a different person than I had been before. And so I just kind of gave in at that point.
You had a reckoning.
Yes, I still didn't call myself a Swiftie at that point, but
wow.
But I, there was a period where I thought that 1989 was a genius album. But I wasn't in love with her earlier stuff. But then my son became pretty excited about Red, and I grew to think that was an even better album. And now I'm just full on Swiftie.
Wow. So what was it because it was when your son was into it that pushed you over the edge from 1989,
Yeah,
from that experience, from the experience you had in 1989 to that time?
Yeah, I think I just actually heard the songs on 1989 so often that I was able to kind of hear them as songs without the kind of noise about pop music surrounding it, without kind of this idea of what kind of music I listen to or who I am, who I should be. I heard them as songs, and it's like, these are great. And I will say that this might fall into the category of noise, but one of the things that my kids kept telling me was, she writes all her own music. And eventually, after they told me that about 400 times, I started listening to lyrics and realized that she is, kind of a genius. And I was fascinated by the way she reinvents herself on every album. So I would say, it was 1989 that pushed me over the edge into being a full-on Taylor Swift fan. So, I'm obviously so excited to talk to you about this.
I was so shocked when I asked you what you wanted to talk about, and you were like, Taylor Swift. I did not see that coming.
I know. Well, I told my husband that you had asked me to talk with you, and he was like, "Oh, so," and I said, "I'm having trouble deciding what to do because, as you know, I'm a huge music person. I was a DJ in college, at Oberlin radio station. Yeah, I'm just like,
wow.
I spent my whole youth going to shows in New York, and and he said, Bob Mould, Elvis Costello." And I was like, I want to talk about Taylor Swift. And he actually was like, "Oh, that's a great idea."
Well, you were talking about, looking at the lyrics of a Taylor Swift song. Do you happen to remember any of your favorite or any of that kind of speak to you?
Yes, I have so many favorites that it's hard to decide. But some of my favorites are The Last Great American Dynasty, a pretty recent one. I, of course, love the song Love Story, which I have basically memorized. Obviously, an early and sort of sentimental song. And it's a song that my family during the pandemic would have sing-alongs to, and we still do. I have 3 kids now, and sometimes we'll be driving places and we'll have a love story sing-along. I love Gold Rush. I love Clean from 1989. I love so many. It's hard to decide on a favorite. I love my first favorite song was actually Blank Space from 1989. Okay. That was the song. That's really the song that pushed me over. Now I love every song on that album. So do you have a favorite Taylor Swift song?
I'm going to say it's all in the latest album. I'm going to say all the latest songs are my favorite album. My favorite songs because, I can't go backwards. I just have to go forwards with her,
Right.
So
that's a good life motto.
Yeah, I mean, I was not involved in the video for All Too Well, but that was, I was glad to see the 10-minute version come back out instead of the shorter version. So that was pretty great. But and I also like the video for the new album also, but I feel like I have to say those are the babies now, So that's
On
sounds
you mean
creepy.
by the new album, you mean Midnight's the really new album.
Midnight's the really new album, right? So I would say
Yeah.
anything, all of those off of the, you know. But let's talk about Blank Space then, if you want. What specifically did you like in Blank Space?
I mean, the line that for a while was like my Twitter bio darling, I'm a nightmare dressed like a daydream. Um, and there is something for me really freeing about that song. This is all going to sound a little bit cliched, but I think it is not just the lyrics, but sort of the whole composition of the song that kind of subversive. Like for me, it felt subversive in a kind of personal way. I suppose it is subversive in a political way, but there's a way in which it reminds me of the Sylvia Plath poem, Lady Lazarus, where she says, I rise with my red hair and I eat men like air, which was very subversive for its time, in 1963 when it came out. I feel like Blank Space does a similar thing. She's kind of, there's an irony to it, and she's kind of saying, I'm the one in charge here. Like you kind of think that you're in charge and you're going to chew me up and spit me out, but actually I'm in charge. And in fact, these sort of terrible things that you're thinking about me, um, I'm excited about my destructive power. Um, and I guess, I don't know if you feel this way too, Tamara, like you're a very powerful person, in a way that I'm not, a person who's kind of like tells people what to do, whereas like I just kind of sit by myself and do stuff. Aside from when I worked on a film, um, but for me, I think I've always been a very rule following person, and I think my persona has very much been kind of like I'm good, I'm kind, I'm sweet, and that song, felt very cathartic to me, because it made me feel like, okay, Taylor Swift also had that persona of being like, I'm good, I'm kind, I'm sweet. And people see her as reinventing herself actually with the album Reputation, and it, like in a kind of like Miley Cyrus chopping off all her hair and, like piercing her tongue or whatever sort of way. But I actually think that she was kind of doing this all along, that she was saying like, I'm not this kind of like sweet Southern girl, I'm not actually, Juliet, like in Love Story. Like I'm, like I rise with my red hair and I eat men like air,
That's amazing.
I'm a nightmare dressed like a daydream. Like I'm a Black Widow spider, but I'm psyched about that. Like I'm not embarrassed about it and I'm not ashamed. I'm psyched about it. And I think she's also saying this is just one component of who I am. She's not saying like it's not a kind of, a lot of her songs are, to use like the lexicon of poetry, are persona songs where she's taking on a persona and kind of writing in the voice of that person, or their narrative, their story songs, which is a little bit actually what makes her different than a lot of contemporary artists, right? Like that's not the norm. Most people are not writing narrative songs, especially not like blockbuster or pop stars. Her songs are really different in terms of what they're doing. That lyrically, like the way they rise and fall, they have a narrative arc to them usually. But so Blank Space is obviously a persona poem, in which she's kind of taking on this persona of this kind of like man-eating woman who kind of has the veneer of a sweet girl. But I think it was her way of saying, fuck you. Like I can be a bunch of different things at once. And like you, whoever, like Jake Gyllenhaal or whatever, like, you're totally unimportant. Like you just filled a blank space for me. Like you're nothing. I love that.
Yeah,
So,
I've already moved on. Right. Yeah, that was
exactly.
yeah. I think that's been super important to her. But I totally had never seen, yeah, your dual trajectory of being a good person and a, and a nice person, and her definitely being, family oriented or listening to her parents, and then kind of moving out of that space. Um,
Yes.
I was thinking when you were like, "I'm nice, I'm good," like that didn't. You're right. That never came up for me as a person. That's never come up. It's always
And that's one
wait.
of the reasons that I love you.
This is mine. Is what's happening? Where are we? Let's do it. That's it. Those are my three. I don't. Yeah, but somebody like her, she is. I feel like she played into some some male fantasies in the beginning that have been sort of subverted since. And when you're talking about the persona, the scenarios that she creates, I feel like she's been doing that since the very first album. And that love story, especially that you were talking about, is definitely like that. I mean, I think it's funny. It's who thinks about rewriting Shakespeare. I mean, I always like the idea that at a tragedy that you get a puppy at the end of the play. And I've always wanted to rewrite a play that after somebody's like eyes have been gouged out, that indeed you could, you're like, well, you know what? This is a real shit show. But also, here's a puppy. You know what? Thank you for playing. Thanks for the game of life. So I don't write, I'm definitely like steering her in that vein of like, let's make everything turn out okay. Because in the beginning, that's what I liked too, was sort of like, we've all been through so much tragedy. Here's a puppy.
There's a puppy. There's a happy ending. Yeah. I mean, because I guess even the kind of darker songs, there is like melodically, there is a sort of upbeat feel to them in a way.
Yeah. I mean, except for stuff like, Bad Blood is different, but that's like, I can't imagine having this many fans scrutinizing you this way, but I'm sure that you have a lot of rage pent up from just dealing with everyday life. So I feel like Bad Bloods are these vigilante shits and things like that. That's par for the course. But I wanted to go back to you're talking about the persona, the persona songs, and I'm sure as a Swiftie you already know this about the glitter pin songs and the quill pin songs and things like that. Do you know this already?
No.
Oh, okay. So she says that her, when we started together, she said she had 3 different kinds of pens that she uses to write songs with. So these are sort of the persona ones. Right. So one is a quill pen, one is a fountain pen, and one is a glitter gel pen.
Oh.
Right. So, and everything kind of falls in one of these categories, right? But there are also so many more pens than that. And I don't think her fans know this. I don't think she tells anybody. I also think she loses pens. But there's some pens that are tiny pens. There's teeny pens. There's mood pens, moog pens, and moon pens. So there's like at least 12 other pens that she hasn't even gotten into yet. And I don't know, I haven't seen anything like that on Twitter, but
wait, I'm so curious.
Yeah. So those are all.
Is she into like the kind of like scented gel pens, that are hugely popular in Japan, like the kawaii pens,
Yeah.
the like
that could
cute
be the glitter pen. Yeah.
Yeah, I was wondering. I actually love those.
I love just the
they're kind of irresistible.
I agree. So the quill pen is for things that are mostly about colonial Williamsburg, from what she's told me. But and then there's a Sharpie. I'm sorry, I almost forgot. There's a Sharpie pen, and that's for songs about work, songs about getting fired, anything where you need to write your name on a box and you need to get out of town. So that's pretty much, that's a lot.
Anything involving the word deadline.
Yeah, those don't usually make the final cut. It's usually like boys and situations and heartbreak and emotions. So, put it in the box. Anything that's put it in the box that's, unless it's that Beyonce song, it usually gets cut before you hear it.
I'm curious I'm almost scared to ask this, but like, what is it like working with her?
She is
Is
pretty
that
cut
too
and
big a
dry.
question?
No, she's pretty much the same throughout. She kind of knows what she wants. She likes to she gets up really late. When you work with her, you actually have to go to her compound,
Hmm.
which is, in Nashville and at the lakes. And I actually sleep in a cot next to her room because she's got a piano in her room and other things. And I just when she wakes up in the middle of the night, you just sort of hear some, like some tinkling or some strumming or something like that, and you just kind of know you need to get up. And then you start just recording, and then you get Jackie Antonoff, and we call him Jackie Sparkles. Jackie
Oh
Sparkles,
my God, really?
yeah, and the Jackie Sparkles in the quiet one. That's the Aaron Dessner is the quiet one.
That makes
And
sense.
yeah, and you get them on a conference call, and then from there she kind of just she works it out, and then you get a rhyming dictionary, and then you see if that's good, and then you throw it out, and you know she will tell you from a woman's point of view what she is trying to say, and then sometimes she'll flip it,
Mm.
yeah, and tell you from a man's point of view, and then you figure out the difference.
And with this kind of reinvention with every album, that is conscious, right? It's not just like that she's thinking like, oh, I'm kind of more interested in doing something that has more synth or distortion, or like she's consciously trying to kind of have a kind of concept album that's different than the previous one, or
Yeah, I
no?
think she knows she's hunting for something. It might be like when you're looking for, I don't know, you tell me, when you're looking for like a new book to write, you're just sort of kind of casting your net and you're sort of seeing what you're interested in. And I
Hmm.
think for her, it runs the gamut. For a while, I thought we were going to make an album based on a slip and slide, and I wasn't sure how that was going to work, but I trust her. It was going to be a summertime album after sort of like the wintry, pandemic albums, and it was going to be sort of a fun in the sun. And then I think she realized that we're not out of the pandemic yet, so we can't.
Right.
It's not time. It's not quite fun in the sun yet. We're sort of like fun in the pandemic, and that
That
feels a
seems
little different.
typically astute of her. Like she's so kind of tapped into where people are that she's like,
Yeah,
no, we're not ready for a slip and slide nostalgia album.
that seems pre-pandemic.
Yeah,
That seems like the old us. The old us.
definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
uh, for a while it was going to be about zoos. We went to zoos for about a year, and every track was going to be the name of a different animal that was in love or in
Oh,
heartbreak, and then that didn't. Yeah, I mean koalas. This was about a koala with this complex relationship who had left another koala and was currently eyeballing another koala, but they weren't sure if it was going to work out. And the koala really needed to get out of that town. And I don't, we just never finished that one.
yeah. That seems like it would be a really interesting departure for her. It almost has like a Dada-esque aspect to it.
Yeah,
But I
right.
can see her going in that direction, being like, I'm going to make an art album that also has this kind of childlike naivete to it. That makes total sense. I love that. And is it hard to not just like hug her? Or is she not as sweet? Or not sweet, that's the wrong term, but she just seems she's so easy to love
She's just so
as a
lost on
fan.
songs. She's so eager to get out songs. Like I think I think she's like the Stephen King of songwriting. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
I think she like goes to bed and then she wakes up and she's like doodle doodle doodle, like it's sort of, and then she'll it's just sort of like if you let her rest, she'll reset and start up again with a new, concept album.
For updates, go to Every Band Ever on Instagram. Joanna Rakoff is the author of the international best-selling memoir My Salinger Year and the best-selling novel A Fortunate Age. The film adaptation of the memoir opened in theaters worldwide in 2021, starring Margaret Qualley and Sigourney Weaver. Her new memoir, The Fifth Passenger, is forthcoming from Little Brown in 2024. Tamara Federici has scheduled a chaotic surprise. The editor is Will Velasquez. The audio engineer is Clark Jackson. Thanks for listening. See you next week.